But anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. We just wanted you to feel welcome. This is your first Affinity Group session. So basically all that means is that you chose something, a topic that would be applicable to your role in your school. And we are going to have a couple sessions here. Brooke will explain a little bit more about this later. So we'll have a couple sessions together, and then we'll do other things and then come back together, small groups, large groups, small groups. So again, like she mentioned, John has already dropped the resources link into the chat bar. So if you're available to see the chat, like not if you're in your car, but if you're on a computer, feel free to click on that and it'll take you to our Rural Life Resources page where you'll have all of the slideshows and different things that the Lead Teacher Collaborative has gone through. So with that, I just want to welcome you and kind of introduce ourselves. Now, some of you I know, I'm Tracy Ballou and this is Brooke Drennan with me.
Hi.
And we're excited to have you. So we, in these sessions, hope to showcase some high impact strategies you can use both in person and virtual and or hybrid too, if you have kind of a mix of the two like our county does. So we just want to model some strategies, but also we want this to be a space where you all learn from each other, not necessarily just from us, but maybe you guys get to know each other well enough to where you guys are learning and asking questions of each other and sharing ideas with each other. Because if 2020 showed us anything, it's the teachers in the classroom are, they are adaptive and responsive, and they have learned on the fly a lot of these tools. So please be willing to share with us. And our next screen is going to go to a Zoom reminder. I know so many of us are familiar with Zoom. And if you would just make sure that you can find your chat bar. If you need to move your little boxes around, move your little boxes around so that you can toggle between different screens, that kind of thing. But we are going to ask for some response. So you can do the chat bar, you can unmute your mic. But we do ask that, especially if you're in a school and sometimes announcements come over, that kind of thing, that we keep muted until wanting to talk. So that way we don't have any background noise. Like I was just telling Brooke a couple minutes ago, I have a tree trimmer outside of my house. The snowstorm knocked down one of my neighbor's trees. So they're out there cutting up wood. So if y'all hear grinding, that's what it is. And if you need firewood, I guess come and see me. So again, we're all familiar with Zoom, but just kind of make sure that you can find the chat box for discussion. This next part was really just to kind of get to know you. And I believe that we've already spoken with everybody. Is that right, Brooke?
I think so. I don't see that anyone new has joined us at this time. So I think.
Okay, perfect. So Robin, Sally, and Mandy, thank you for taking the time to introduce yourselves. And that was really what that was. We want you to feel comfortable today sharing with us. And we know it can be a little awkward, but it's a small group today. So hopefully it'll feel more like just a group phone call. Do you remember those where we used to be able to get on the phone with 4 friends and be able to chit chat with 4, party line or whatever it was called? I don't know, but long time ago. I'm going to turn it over to Brooke now, and she's going to kind of walk you just through some reminders about rural life.
So this is our first time together as a small group, but you'll remember as we met together as a whole group of lead teachers in our collaborative back in November, just kind of being introduced to some of the basic information about the grant. So Rural Life is supporting middle grades literacy instruction and outcomes for students, just bringing together research and best practice from both the literacy and the personalized learning fields. Like I mentioned, we've been together with this collaborative in November, and we're just really hoping to build a sense of community among our Rural Life schools. And this is in lieu of our 2 full days that we would typically have on a non-COVID year, on a normal year. We would have 2 full days together. But instead of that, we're just going to be meeting in collaboratives and our affinity groups and having some smaller chunks of time together, but we're still hoping to be able to reflect on and share about our real life work that's happening in our schools and hear great ideas from one another, and engage in professional learning that's centered around key topics that are aligned to the grant. So in November, when we met, you all helped us kind of narrow down some of those topics. So we created from that some affinity groups, and then you got to select those groups. So today is our first meeting, and we'll have another in February. And then we'll get back together as a whole group in around mid-February. I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact date for that. But we'll be getting back together as a whole group of lead teachers. And then after that, then you'll have your second round of affinity groups. And so those will be completely different topics. I think you'll have the opportunity to choose a new group, so you might be with new people. But for now, for January and February, we're sticking together in the tech group, and we're just going to try to engage in some learning and discussion around just different tech topics that can really be helpful for you. So we've tried to design that really around your feedback. We hope to be able to discuss how to use technology effectively in our classrooms, whether it be in person or virtual, just learn about some new tools and strategies while really focusing in on those best practices that are tried and true. Share our own successes and challenges along the way of implementing those new strategies, maybe share some ideas and give feedback to one another. And then really just reflect on this year's experience, as crazy as it has been with remote and hybrid, and really discuss a bright spot, hopefully, if there are some opportunities to transform teaching and learning based on just kind of what we've gone through this year and what we can take away from this experience. So that's kind of where we are today for this session specifically. We'll be, again, just learning and reflecting on those best practices, just kind of kicking off that conversation of how do we use technology, what role has it come to play, and how are we utilizing that in the best way possible, exploring and applying different virtual collaboration tools. So this came out as a theme in the feedback that people were really interested in collaborating, helping students collaborate virtually. So we're going to be looking at some tools that might help us do that and kind of playing around with those. And then just really collaborating with our colleagues to improve our practice, just discover, share ideas, and maybe solve some problems. I know that we probably can't solve all of the world's problems today, and we won't even try. And there are some problems that you're having with your classroom that are tech related that we may not have the answer to. For example, we understand, we recognize that if you're talking about virtual collaboration and your students aren't showing up to your synchronous sessions, then that's a problem that a new tool isn't necessarily going to fix right away, but we're hoping to be able to discuss some workarounds and to help each other begin to tackle some of those problems that we're encountering, because I know collaboration has been a biggie this year. How do we make this work? What's feasible for that? So that's kind of where we're going today, just to give you an overview, and I'm going to toss it back over to Tracy now.
Okay, I'm dropping a link for those of you who can. Click on the link in the chat box. It'll open up a new Padlet page. So again, if you're not very familiar with toggling between Zoom and having another one open, you can minimize your Zoom screen so that we're only on like one little part of your page while you have the Padlet open. While you're doing that, what I would like you to do is obviously access the Padlet via the link, but take a few minutes. What we've done is compiled 4 quotes on technology, 4 different views or aspects of looking at technology and learning. So what we'd like you to do is read all 4 of those quotes, then maybe select one that kind of speaks to you. Maybe something sticks out, you might wholeheartedly agree, or you might vehemently disagree. But if you would, click the little plus button, and then that allows you to respond. And Brooke will even show you an example. The top line will be, after you click the plus sign, the top line will be the title, and then you put your comment underneath that. So after we do that, just kind of give a 2-3 sentence response to one of the quotes that speaks to you, whether positively or negatively. And then after that, we'd like you to, we're going to give you some time. So I'll be quiet here in a minute, and we'll give you some time to look at the different responses that others have put on there and then respond to one of theirs. So let me give you all that in a nutshell. That would be to, you're responding to a quote after you've read all 4 of the quotes, and then you're replying to a couple different peers. So respond to one, and then you reply to others. Hopefully that's it in a nutshell. So, and then we'll just give you 3 or 4 minutes to just read and reflect and respond, and then we'll come back together and discuss. And if you're having trouble accessing it, let me know and I can redrop that link for you. And you may have to use the refresh button to kind of start to see other people's responses. Sally, I'm going to respond for you. I just got your text, so I'm going to add it to our Padlet here.
Robin, you may have missed this. Sally's driving. Are you also in the car, or are you at a computer? That would be helpful for us to know, because we have some interactive things here, but if most of us are not at a computer.
I'm at a computer.
You are? Okay.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Also, I don't want to overshare, but if you're not familiar with Padlet, after you get a couple comments, you kind of have to use the little scroll bar just next to that column just to kind of scroll down and see the others. Just a side note, have you guys noticed that how Brooke's name is showing up because she's signed in and some of us are totally anonymous posting so we may call on you and say, hey, who posted this? Talk to us about that kind of thing.
I was wondering about that. I was wondering if it showed up on your screen or if I was just seeing my own name just because it was.
So do you guys feel like that was enough time to give you time to read and respond to others also? So if we could kind of come back together and let's kind of think about what are some of our biggest takeaways in this? What would we like to dig into a little bit more? Or what are some new ideas that we have, or what did we have in common? I want to say this right now. I love the person who said, I learn a lot from my students. That is so true, especially in this day and age. I feel that way too. I feel like my own personal children and my students can teach me a lot. So if somebody wouldn't mind unmuting and they just kind of tell us what they thought was either impressive, they agreed, disagreed, or a comment that they made.
My comment that I typed in about was the one about finding the balance. But then I also think about that Bill Gates quote, because it is, the teacher is the most important thing. And I think that for the teacher to be the most important thing, then the technology is just the tool. But the teacher still has the background knowledge and the expertise to figure out how to best use that for the students and to meet the needs. Because it's not about the technology, it's still about what is it that they're learning. So I guess those two would be the ones that kind of spoke to me, but the one that I typed in about was about finding the balance, the one on the far right. And I think it's impressive that Bill Gates realized that the teacher is the most important thing. That really stood out to me.
Yes. Teacher kind of sets the tone, don't they? If they're open and willing to learning something new, so will their students also be, right? Or vice versa. If they're not open and willing, then their students will follow suit. But I like that one too. And that's the one that Sally commented on too. The tech is a good engagement tool, but the teacher is the centerpiece and it's how they use. And that's kind of one thing we wanted to focus on today, guys. It's just not so much. We all have hundreds of websites now that have been brought to our attention in 2020 of all these great tech tools, but it's really how we use them to engage our students, either collaboratively with each other or with you, that matters, right? It's not so much the tools. So thank you. Does anybody else want to kind of comment, piggyback on what she said, or comment on another quote?
I liked the part. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I've been trying to read when I've gotten to places where I can stop, so I'm not like looking at the screen and driving at the same time. I don't want to alarm anyone. I really like the part though where it mentioned about like the tactile toys. Like it's not always just about a technical tool or something they can do on a Chromebook. For goodness sake, they're spending a lot of time on their Chromebooks anyway. And I think it's kind of neat to think about how other things, commonplace things, Legos and Play-Doh and things like that could be integrated. And having worked with older kids for most of my career, I've found that the older kids like that kind of stuff sometimes as much, if not more, than the little kids do. So I think, to be aware that just because we have technology and kids seem to be engaged by technology does not mean that that's the only thing we have at our disposal that might engage them.
Reminder. Yeah, absolutely. And just because we have it doesn't give us license to use it all the time or fruitlessly. So yes. Anybody else kind of want to piggyback on what Sally said and or something new? Well, we will be giving you lots of time to share. So I appreciate those of you who have spoken up. Thank you for your input. And we are going to go back to our slideshow. So you guys can just kind of leave the Padlet open. If you're unfamiliar with Padlet, I literally had to learn it in 5 minutes several months ago when we were doing one of these. And it was the easiest thing. It was so great. And then we're going to do some other ones later. You can kind of compare and contrast. So kind of remember Padlet versus some of the other things we do later. And then Brooke's going to walk you through some collaborative best practices.
Yeah, I hope we have a chance to just kind of talk about your questions as far as like if you're not familiar with setting up Padlet, if we could kind of walk you through some of those things. So if you have some specific questions now, I know in the participant guide that we shared, there was a spot for questions in your notes, or I mean, you really don't have to use that. Sometimes I rarely ever print those things out because I have such a terrible printer that I'm just never printing those things, but I'm just taking notes wherever. So, you know, just jot down any questions that you might have for us and things that we could go over on the Padlet site for sure, because we want to get to those nuts and bolts type questions too, like how do we make this work, but also just ideas for uses and just being really deliberate in the tools that we select. And I noticed that Lynn is here with us now. Hi, Lynn. We're a really small group and we're trying to keep it as informal as possible. So, you know, if you have a question, feel free to type it in the chat. If you have something you want to say, just feel free to unmute and it'll all be good. So I'm going to bring my screen back up and put those slides back up for you. Lynn, what school are you with?
I'm at Gray in Washington County.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you for joining us and being here with us today. What do you teach?
I teach 7th grade language arts.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sorry I was late. I was doing about 43 things at once before I could come in.
We understand. I didn't think my computer was going to be up and running to start on time. So we understand those things happen for sure. So in our focus on tech, we really want to focus on some best practices. As we see, it's really the teacher, like Bill Gates said, that makes the difference there. It's the tech tools are awesome to have, and I always love using them with my students. And I'm just really interested in all of the new things that are out there, but I have to kind of rein myself in or remind myself of those best practices sometimes, like why am I using this tool and how is it going to support that best practice? So as educators, we all know the power of collaboration. I'm sure that you guys have seen tons of research around the benefits of collaboration for our students, just helping them develop those high-level thinking skills, self-management, just being able to retain that content, even helping their self-esteem and prepare them for real life social situations and work situations where they have to work with others. And I know that we teachers love to assign group projects and have students collaborate. And I also know, as I talk with teachers this year and as I go into schools and visit, I know that one of the big obstacles this year is really how do I make collaboration work? I love doing group work. I love having my students work together. But because of all of the different barriers as far as, you know, maybe we're doing remote instruction, maybe we are working asynchronously, maybe students aren't showing up to synchronous classes, or maybe you know, the social distancing practices that are in place are really preventing me from having students working groups. So how do we make that happen? That's a big question that has been on everyone's mind. We know that it's a great thing for them, and we want to keep them collaborating. So that's kind of why we selected this video to send out to you all as prep, kind of like a way to prepare for the session. just to begin thinking about those ways that we can keep kids collaborating and ways that you are keeping kids collaborating. So we're really excited to hear from you as well about some things that are working and maybe some things that you want to try to see if someone else in the group has tried that. We all know that life happens and you all are as busy as you can be this year. So just in case we didn't have a chance to catch that video, we're just going to play it one time through for the whole group, so that we can all kind of like get a refresher of that or be introduced to some of the themes. And then we also ask you to just jot down a 3, 2, 1 really quickly, just like 3 things that you notice from the video, 2 things that you're wondering about, and 1 strategy that's working for you that you're finding success with, to keep kids collaborating this year. So if you didn't have a chance to do that yet, maybe you can just jot down a few thoughts, and then we're going to use a different tool and share those and kind of have a discussion around that, and hopefully just share some best practices and things that have been working for you. So I'm going to go ahead and play the video, and if you can't hear it once I start, just be sure to let me know.
It's easy to let group work fall by the wayside when you can't be in the room to ensure focus. Even for those teaching in person right now, social distancing prevents students from gathering around shared documents or devices. But using digital tools to collaborate can keep students connected, sharpen their tech skills, and support core academics. Here are 5 ways to enable your students to work together when they can't be near one another. Many schools already use basic tools designed for collaboration, like Google Docs or Slides. Ask students to build on each other's work in a presentation. Revision history will let you track contributions by author and help your students avoid accidental lost work. Ask students to create a digital bulletin board together to manage a project, organize information, or show their thinking. Tools that offer virtual collaboration walls for stickies or images, such as Padlet or Nearpod Collaborate, are easy to learn. Brainstorms, gallery walks, and sequencing activities can all be taken online with an interactive whiteboard tool like Jamboard. Breakout rooms can pose a management challenge, but they can be a great way to facilitate virtual discussions or small group work for older students while using a video conferencing tool like Zoom. Keep students on track by joining random breakout rooms, or hold them accountable with shared documents. Harness students' enthusiasm for virtual worlds by assigning them to work on models together in an immersive environment. Many games, like Minecraft and Roblox, offer support and tools just for educators. Connect the project to their learning outside the virtual world and set parameters around which tools or materials can be used to avoid a potential time suck. Ask students to record videos to show their learning with a popular tool like Flipgrid, and classmates can comment on them or make response videos. Many apps allow students to reflect on each other's uploaded work, like Seesaw. Sharing guidelines for appropriate and respectful use of tools like this is key for a great peer feedback experience for students. Ultimately, the same best practices will help your students collaborate remotely via technology as anywhere else. Setting clear ground rules and expectations together, designating roles and scaffolding the basic skills needed, and closely tracking student work and progress. With a little bit of tech know-how, you can get your students back into a collaborative zone no matter where they are.
Okay, so hopefully that video sparks some new ideas or just kind of reinforce some strategies that you're already finding success with. What we're going to do now is we're just going to share some of the thoughts that we had as we watched that video, either if you just watched it today for the first time or if you had a chance to look at that before you came today. So we're going to share our thoughts on a Jamboard. And that was kind of highlighted in the video, and it's probably something that you guys are familiar with. I know it's a tool that's been pretty popular this year. So we thought we might just kind of play around on the Jamboard and use that to facilitate our discussion today. And I think Tracy is going to drop that link in the chat. It's also in your participant guide at the top where the links are. I think it just says Jamboard there, and you could click that and follow it. But it should take you to our Affinity Group Jamboard.
So I've dropped the link. So if you guys kind of give me a thumbs up if you get in there. Okay, thank you guys. Thank you. Perfect.
All right, so I hate to be sharing a bunch of like basic information if you guys are like, I know this tool, I use this tool all the time. But just in case, some things that I wanted to point out here at the top, you will see the different frames. You should see a number with the frames. You can actually click on that and navigate back and forth between the frames. I think we have about 6 frames on this. They're kind of like slides that you can navigate back and forth on. So we're going to be using the first 3 right now. On frame 1, if you would, please just add the 3 things that you noticed while you were watching. So that would be your 3. And you're just going to do that by using a sticky note. Over here on the left side, you'll see all of your different options like a pen, a pointer, eraser. And then you're going to have that sticky note feature there. You just open that up. You can change the color of your sticky note. If you really love pink, for example, you could change it to pink and just type your notice. And you'll see you'll have to hit cancel to get out of there. But they just kind of all pop up in the same place. You can drag and drop those around, or we can organize those for you guys as you're working. But just type each of your different things that you notice on a different sticky, if you would please. And then you can scroll through to the, sorry, my Zoom toolbar is giving me problems. It's right in the way of where I need to be. But you can scroll through different to the next frame and add 2 things that you wondered about. And then onto the 3rd frame where you're going to add a strategy that has helped you this year. So we're just going to kind of add all of those notes that we had taken down already. We're just going to add them to the Jamboard on stickies. Any questions about that? All right, so I see some people are starting already. I'll give you probably about 3 or 4 minutes to add those, and then if we need more time, we can take that, because we're going to just add them all right now on the different frames, just so that's clear. And we'll take just about one more minute. I know we have so much to share, but time is just zooming by. Maybe if you haven't made it to slide to frame 3 yet, travel over there and just share a strategy, because we really want to take some time to see what's actually working for you. Okay, and as we're finishing up, just sharing our final thoughts, I just kind of want to open it up for you all to chat and maybe make some connections. I see some people are interested in some of the same things, and there are a few questions out there, things that we would like to know more about. So I just want to open up the floor for anyone. What similarities are you noticing? Did anyone point anything out that you didn't notice, or is anything striking you? Big idea right now. Can you answer someone's question maybe, or even share your strategy that's working for you? Or if you see someone that's doing something that you want to know more about, maybe ask a question for that person. So just kind of open forum.
I'll say something. I know someone mentioned Flipgrid that they want to know more about.
Mm-hmm.
And I had seen that on a video I was watching this summer, but what helped me is there's all kinds of YouTube tutorials for teachers and students. So I watched that and familiarized myself, and then found one that I thought would work best for my students, and showed it in class and posted this material in Google Classroom. And it was very simple for them to do once I got the hang of posting something. But the YouTube tutorials were a big help.
Absolutely. I learned so much from YouTube. If I don't know how to do it, I just YouTube it. So there are some amazing teachers out there. I'm trying to think of the maybe Class Tech Tips is an account that I love to follow. Do you have a favorite that you follow?
I don't necessarily follow this person. It was a social studies teacher, is a man's social studies teacher, and I had to get past some of the grammatical things that errors that he said. But he made it very simple for the students and showed the basics in the first minute and a half, all they need to really know. And then he showed the add-ons, and they could put on hats and add backgrounds, and he showed them how to edit. If they didn't like what they were doing, they could stop it and add on or take out or whatever. He made it very simple. Off the top of my head, I can't remember his name, but I know the whole thing was 4.5 minutes. And he was a social studies teacher. I remember that much.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Does anyone else have something maybe to add to that, or a strategy that's really working for you, or a question?
I noticed that a few people put Jamboard, that they're aware of Jamboard, but they'd kind of like to learn a little bit more and a little bit deeper. And I actually, while working with Brooke on this, I actually learned a couple of the tips of the trade. There are really some impressive Jamboards out there. And so Brooke, do you want to maybe mention how you put in the little backdrops, and then that way those stay there? So for some of you who are brand new to Jamboard, this might be a way that you can put a picture in the backdrop and then allow your kids to put Post-it notes on top of it.
So one really scary thing about Jamboard is that if you want your students to be able to add to the Jamboard, then you have to give them editing privileges, which means that they can go up here and hit clear frame, unless there's a way around that. And if someone's using it with their students regularly, they can probably speak to that more than me because I mostly use it with adults. But I know that it can be a little scary. It's all anonymous, and they can pretty much, you give them the keys and they can drive this thing. So if your frame gets cleared, one kind of workaround on that is you can set a background, and you just go up here to set background, and you can choose one of their pre-selected ones. Like I could change that to a grid. What I did here is I just did an image, and I did a Google image search. But something you could do, you could pretty much turn any graphic organizer into a background by creating a Google slide with that, whatever graphic organizer you wanted to use. So let's say you wanted like a 2-column chart or something like that. You can create that on a slide, and then you can just save that slide. And I'm showing that here on my screen. You can save that slide. You can download that as a JPEG image to your computer. So then you have that saved as a picture, and you can actually upload from your computer and save any slide that you have as the background for your Jamboard, which I think could be super helpful. I want to undo this because I don't know where my, okay. So, and you do mess anything up, you can basically just hit undo. So you have your background saved, but if somebody goes up here and hits clear frame, all of your student responses are going to be gone. I'm afraid to do that right now, but I'm going to try it. Okay. So I just deleted everything, and then I can undo that and bring it back. So those are just a couple of different things you can do. Of course, you can go up here and expand that frame bar, and so you can add a new frame up here, and this is where you would toggle back and forth. And something else that I learned that I just absolutely love is you can assign this directly from Google Classroom. So if you're in your Google Classroom and you go to create a new assignment, you can attach from your drive a Jamboard, and you could assign a Jamboard and make a copy just like you do with Google Docs or Google Slides. You can make a copy for each student. So that wouldn't necessarily be collaborative, but if you had some interactive activities, like let's say you wanted to do something and have them do like a little drag and drop, something like this, like I just kind of set this up and maybe put my students on here ahead of time. And if they wanted to just like drag their name over to the one that they prefer, like this or that, they could do that. So that would be like a neat interactive thing that you could do. You could also put answers, or you could put vocabulary words or whatever. I mean, the possibilities for that are kind of limitless, and I'm sure you guys can come up with 1,000 better ideas than I can for this, uses for this. But just kind of like if you set that background up, they can't move it, but then you can all of a sudden make these little stickies draggable. And so you could do a lot of different things with that. So it really all comes down to how are they using this for collaboration? Are they using it just like for individual work? Are they working individually in the same space, or are they actually collaborating kind of like we are now with sharing ideas and building on each other's ideas? So Tracy, did that kind of cover some of the things you were thinking about?
Absolutely. And if that was repetitive, I hope that at least seeing some of the slides that some of the images that she has used were not necessarily created in Google. She just saved them as an image and then inserted them as the background. So that's
just
really nice.
Anything that you have. Yeah.
That's really nice when you get into other programs that you can make some really fancy things. And then that way it's not just a blue screen with little Post-it notes on it. You can get as deep or as simple as you want to with Jamboard. I've even seen wonderful examples from an algebra teacher, and she does all kinds of line graphs, and her kids can respond. And if anybody's interested in the math, we'll kind of stick with, I think a lot of us are ELA, so we'll kind of stick with our subject here, but if anybody's interested in that, I can share that example one with you. So I think so, Brooke. I just thought maybe they had questions about little things like that, about, just navigating. Also, I noticed Sally put something in, and I believe this is her tool that she was using a lot this year, and maybe that was her response, but she said Alice Keeler on Twitter. So that was something that, that was in regards to the YouTube discussion earlier. That was somebody she was learning a lot from. Okay.
So just going back to your strategies that are working, would anyone like to share something that you're using and just how it's working for you, just how you're using it with actual students?
We use Jamboard almost on a daily basis. I love it. I think it's one of the easiest things for students to use and for me to use. I build them in Google Slides, like you said, and then just import what I need to as a background into Jamboard. They're great for interactive read alouds. So I can do the different stopping points that I want us to stop and think or talk about vocabulary. I just make a Jamboard frame for that, and we just pace our way through the book. I saw a really neat vocabulary activity where it was a Connect Four. So the whole Jamboard frame looked like a Connect Four board, and all the openings in the game had vocabulary words in it. And then you just use the shape tool to make yellow and red chips, and they would just like drag them up and drop them down into their space and talk about that vocabulary word and try to connect four. So Jamboard's my thing right now. So I just from 3 to 3:30, I was presenting about it in a virtual faculty meeting here. So I love Jamboard. I think it's one of the best things that I've used this year.
Well, you should have spoken up. I'm sure you could teach a lot more about this than I can.
No, that was good.
Every day.
If anybody needs help, they know who to call, right? There you go.
I have a question about the Jamboard thing. Since I teach middle school, my worst fear is you always have that 1 or 2 kids that want to make something inappropriate, put up an inappropriate note. I mean, do you find that happens often, and how do you handle that? Because I have terrible middle schoolers, and then once one person does it, somebody else is going to say something cute. So how do you, is that a big issue? Did anybody?
I haven't had that as an issue. We set up kind of the norms of the class and walked through what it meant to use Jamboard and what all was going to happen, just like Brooke just did for us, and that the undo button is kind of your best friend. And then I also let them, for my little ones, when I first used it, like my 3rd graders, they totally hijacked them. So there was one about penguins, and then I looked at it the next day, and they had made these amazing pictures with the shapes. It was unreal what they had done. It looked like one of those little virtual world builders. So sometimes for the little kids, it was like giving them access to it beforehand just to kind of play around with it. And then in the real world collaboration, while they're doing it, it's hard to control, but you can also switch it. One thing I do is switch it from view to edit. When we're done with it, I change the edit access so they can't get back to it until I'm ready for them to get back to it. So.
Okay.
And you would just do that by going up here to actually going to share and then going in to change those settings. So right now I have it set with anyone with the link can edit, which is basically what you have to do when you share that with students, but you could change that to your domain, specifically to your school, or you could restrict it to just certain people and then change it here and make them a viewer. I'm wondering, has anyone ever tried this, assigning different frames to different groups? I know that some people said that they're using breakout rooms. I'm wondering, have you had students work in a collaborative space? Do you assign them to a Google Doc or to a Jamboard or something like that while they're working so that they're all working in the same space? Is that something that's working out for anyone?
I've done that before. I've given them one Google Doc and they all share and they all kind of work together at the same time in the rooms. But I'm very basic at this point.
Yes, and I think keeping it basic, we've been talking about all these different things that you can do, but of course when you're starting out with anything new, you don't want to get overwhelmed with making the prettiest Jamboard ever, but just making it something that's basic and sticking to that best practice as well. So what's my purpose for using this tool? Am I using it just to be using a tool, or am I using it because I'm going to be able to see my students thinking on here? They're going to be able to respond to one another. And so that's a good point. Just keeping it basic, and we were actually going to do a collaborative doc today, but there's no way that we're going to have time for that because we have about 5 minutes left. But we were actually going to work in a collaborative doc today and just kind of practice that. But we figured it's something that a lot of people have been using already, either collaborative docs or slides, and just holding students accountable as they're working together in those groups. And it's also something they could do asynchronously to build on each other's work. It's not as great asynchronously, I guess, but you don't have the conversation in the moment. But just looking at ways that students can really, truly collaborate and not just be working in the same space alongside each other. And we know that happens in person in groups. You can put students in groups and sometimes they're not truly working together. So thinking through the design of those assignments and how we make that happen, I think is really critical as well.
If I can share just one thing real quick.
Yes.
Lines that I've done is putting them in the Google breakout rooms, like giving them assignment to say a summary of a text we've read, and then have one student start a Google Doc and share it with the others in the group. And if they present it while they're present their screen in the breakout room, it only shows to their breakout room. And so they can work on it collaboratively or one person type or whatever, and share the doc while they're in the breakout room and work together. And then just the one person will submit it and they'll have all their names on it. And so that's they've enjoyed that.
That sounds great.
A lot of mom will actually say, can you make a so-and-so, can you make us a breakout room so we can go work? So they do like it.
Those are all great ideas. I wish we just had more time to share. Maybe next time we'll just think a little more about putting in more time for that, because we have about three minutes left. I can't believe it's gone by so quickly. But maybe if we can just take a second, Tracy, would you like to just kind of run through, I guess we'll just skip through a bunch of this stuff. Something we had planned is just showing modeling for going into breakout rooms, just modeling those same things as you would do given roles in the classroom. And then maybe some other stuff that we'll get to next time.
Yeah, maybe we can just throw that into next time. And then we really want to hear back from you all. So if you have learned something today or you got a deeper understanding of some sort of tool or strategy, not necessarily a new tech tool like, oh, I got a new iPhone, check it out, but something that you can utilize, or something that maybe one of the other teachers has mentioned that you're like, yeah, I'm going to try that. So what we would like you guys to do is just kind of commit to trying something new. I also want to give a shout out to Stephanie. She's here too. She teaches completely virtual. She's had a little sick one at home, so she had to get on a little bit late, but maybe next session she can kind of share some of the things that have been working virtually for her too. So
Tracy, one of the things I actually wanted to ask you while we're on this call is, it's my understanding that in our district, they are not allowing us to use breakout rooms. And I've been told that the reason for that is because we can't possibly be in every single one of them at the same time because of monitoring students. And I think it may have been maybe Robin that mentioned that she gets really nervous about using these things. And I'm the same way. I have typically 9 7th graders that show up for my Google Meets. We can't make those mandatory because of connection issues. And I had today for my 8th grade, out of 18 kids, I had 1 show up. So it's just me and him hanging solo, going over the assignments and stuff. And so, I mean, I can still see Jamboards is something that I haven't really thrown my energy into, but it is something that I'm going to use, especially seeing how easy you all have made it seem, like just about stories and things like that. But we are not allowed to use breakout rooms. Is that correct?
Well, I think there would have to be some fail safes. I do know some teachers, so I don't want to give you a hard and fast, and you and I can kind of talk about that. I know I'm going to see you tomorrow. You and I can kind of talk about that tomorrow, but there would have to be some fail safes. One thing I will tell you that's nice about our county is we have Go Guardian, so you can see everybody's screen at once.
Right.
If you have their Go Guardians pulled up on. So anyway, we'll kind of talk about some of those workarounds. But yes,
Okay.
you're right. You're right. That was the original. Because they were worried that kids would get on there and be inappropriate, and then it would be going out to other students,
Right. Well, and that's the ones of mine that show up are the appropriate ones, but I'm afraid that might encourage the inappropriate ones to infiltrate what we've got going now as a good system. So, okay, we can talk about that tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So
The valid concern.
Absolutely, absolutely, because we don't want to be the ones who are giving them the tool to do something, non-class worthy. But back to our next session, guys, is going to be February 10th. And what we would like you to do is just take one thing and commit to trying it, whether that is the Jamboard or whether that's putting the images on the Jamboard or whether that's doing breakout room. And what we want you to do is come back and tell us how it worked. Was it a complete success? Was it a total failure? Or were there some feedback things in between, somewhere in between? So that's kind of what we would like for this. And then Brooke will kind of run you through what's coming up next. And we are going to drop a little evaluation link. And we want you guys to tell us, like you did today, and we appreciate your interactivity. We want you guys to tell us some of the things that you'd like to hear more about, and whether maybe it's not from us, maybe it's from each other, but we can hopefully build our next session around some of the things that you want to know about. So I'll drop that link while Brooke runs you through next.
All right, so I just realized we left our request open, but yes, it is just try something new, whether it's a collaboration tool or something else that you find on your own, and just come back and ready to share that with us. And we'll try to build in definitely more sharing time, because I think what you all have to say is so valuable, because you have the experience with students, the real world knowledge there. So we do have a survey, and Tracy is dropping the link there. We're always hoping to improve, so we would really appreciate your feedback on that. Just reflect on your thoughts on the session and hear insights about potential topics for future lead teacher sessions. We're going to take a look at the Jamboard in planning for next time to kind of see what you all are interested in. But if you wouldn't mind, there's a spot in there, just like anything else you want to share. If there's something that you would really like to learn about next time, that would be very helpful for you as you're teaching either in person, remote, or hybrid, please put that in the spot on the feedback survey. Just things that you're interested in next time, because we want to tailor this and make it as valuable for you as possible. So we do appreciate you all being here today. We know that you're very busy. We'll stick around if anyone has questions or would like to know more about anything that we shared today. But we do not want to take up too much of your time. We're 3 minutes over already. So please just fill out the survey and we'll be around if you want to talk more. Otherwise, we will see you on February the 10th.